The blessing that is meant to be rain has become a curse, not only for residents in Narok, but for many parts of the country, as we will see ahead.
There must have been some communication breakdown, and I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have got an answer, and I think everybody is very satisfied.
Yes, we messed up. Ngaiseri owns up to incompetence in scandal of president's flight that turned back.
15 killed, property worth millions destroyed in Narok deluge.
Wajua kuna swali mingi na wajua mimi ni bunge, niulize kitu nafanyika kwa bunge.
What does Nyali MP Hezron Awiti know about the Kenyan ivory intercepted in Thailand?
Shameful silence by African leaders as Burundi burns on.
"15 dead in Narok flash floods, and danger lurks along the Maimahio-Narok-Bomet road."
Full team coverage tonight on a day the government owned up to coordination blunders that led to the cancellation of the president's trip to the United States.
Full coverage of the Narok deluge with Sheila Sendeo, who is in Narok, Victoria Rubadiri, and Trevor Mbija with us here at the Nation Center. Kenny Jungu will also be joining us a little later with an update on the president's aborted trip to the United States. Narok floods aftermath starts first.
Well, we do begin with a report by Sheila Sendeo on the devastating Narok floods that have so far claimed 15 lives. The floods have brought Narok town's economy on its knees, with the business community counting losses running into millions.
Caught up in the gushing torrent of floodwaters that washed over Narok town, Mohammed Abdi Yusuf perched atop his vehicle, hanging on to its roof and to thinning hope that the storm that rolled over the town would pass. Today, his smile tells of the huge relief, having survived a 2-hour ordeal that for him seemed endless.
All of a sudden, maji ya mvua ikaanza kuja. So ikawa kuna mahali pa kwenda, ni kukaa tu kungoja vile itakuwa. And maji kazidi ikafunika mpaka gari, but niliweza kupanda juu, na after that maji kateremka, and that's how I was saved.
As Narok cleared up from the angry waters that soaked cars, brought down buildings, washed off a people's livelihood and hope, the grim aftermath is now even more real for many more people. The heavy rains may have subsided by the turn of day, but the heavy and dark cloud of unimaginable loss still hangs over a town that is still also cloaked in gloom. James can only pick up the pieces of what's left of his business, loading them into a nearby truck. But his personal loss is yet to be added to the bill. His wife, Esther Nyakeo, was caught up in the raging waters as she tried to get away.
Tukifunga tunakaaga ndani, haikuwagi maji mingi namna hiyo. Haikuwagi maji mingi hivyo. Hapana. Lakini sasa hii ilifika mpaka ipite. Unaona mwisho ya mlango juu. Kwa hiyo kamwanya. Ilifika ipite hapo. Ikipita hapo, hata hizi walls are not made to carry water.
Mama kupanda panda akarudi nyuma. Akasema, nimesahau simu. Acha nirudie. Mimi si ndio nilikuwa nyuma. Sasa na mimi nikaanza kupanda. Nilipofika stairs ya mwisho, huyo mzee akanivuruta, akanirusha huko juu. Sasa bado akabaki, huyu mama naye akaanza tena kupanda, akamshikilia. Sasa ndio alisikia tu mara moja mlango na force ukarukishwa mara moja.
The scenes from the insides of these shops are just a snapshot of the town. Structures caved in, and excavators digging beneath the rubble, checking for possible bodies trapped underneath.
We've sent out an advisory to the residents of this town that because we have a lot of rescue operations going on, and because of the likelihood of more rain, because the long season has just started, people should keep out of town. They should give us time to manage the mess that is already there.
Street flooding already made for a messy commute for the people here.
What were pathways really are now polluted waterways, all muddied up and messy. The images of a town still reeling from the effects of the harsh weather that lashed at them Tuesday evening. The residents say it's not the first time that it's happened, and when it does, their hope of ever getting a permanent fix to their problem always gets drained along with the rainwater.
I cannot rule out of something of such nature happening again, because it's the way the town planning, the informal settlement. You find that most of these buildings have informal settlement.
And the rain keeps falling, making an already bad situation worse. And for the people of Narok, what happened here Tuesday evening could easily happen again. Sheila Sendeo, NTV, Narok County.
The rains are here and Narok is already bearing the toll, with 15 people dead and property destroyed. Unfortunately, there is more bad news, Smriti.
There is indeed, and unfortunately, Trevor Mbija, you are the bearer of that news. Are there more places that are likely to be affected by flash floods?
Unfortunately, yes, Smriti. I have a report from the Kenya Red Cross, and there are more places. If you take a look at the map, these are the flash points. Homa Bay County, Gwasi to be specific, there's over 100 families there that have been displaced by raging floods, crops destroyed, livestock swept away, as well as hundreds of homes have already been damaged. Remember, earlier this month, 7 people were killed after being swept away by flood waters in the same neighborhood. And if you move on to Kisumu County, there's Nyakach, there's Nyando, Muhoroni, and those places have also been affected. The rivers Maugo, Awach, Rangwe, and Riana have burst their banks. The worst affected area is Kabodo village, that's in Nyando constituency. Over in Migori County, Nyatike to be exact, several houses have been destroyed there, and residents here blaming the lack of proper drainage for the floods. And over in Budalangi, there isn't much coming from that area. However, the people in the meteorological department says it's a perennial problem of flooding in that place, and that's why they're keeping a keen eye on it. And then there is Narok, which you've just mentioned a few minutes ago, and the water levels there have significantly reduced, allowing response teams to carry out search and rescue operations in the affected areas. Now, Kenya Red Cross has set up a tracing and information desk right outside Naivas supermarket in Narok to help families trace their loved ones. Mark, since the onset of the rains, a total of 31 flooding incidents have been reported in different parts of the country, and so far about 1,336 households have been affected.
Well, Trevor, where does this leave the residents of the affected area, and what perhaps should they do?
Smriti, the latest forecast by the Kenya Meteorological Department indicates that rainfall is expected to continue over most parts of the country with high intensities through to next month. The advice from humanitarian agencies has always been to move to higher grounds. The counter-argument from the people has always been they do not own land in the higher grounds. So where should they go? The other alternative has always been to dig terraces and ones that can handle intense rainwater. And that is where the county government should come in.
All right, Trevor, thanks very much. Well, what Narok is experiencing is not new. In fact, it's an annual ritual. Victoria, Narok's watery nightmare just doesn't seem to go away.
That's right, Smriti. The rain often seen as a blessing. However, for Narok town, every year the rains come down, the residents' hands go up in despair as they watch their belongings and investments washed away. The most painful loss, however, is that of life, and a fact that has the Narok County government trying to find ways to tame the raging floods that come without fail. Residents trudge through the thick mud. These conditions have become too familiar for those who live and do business in Narok town. Several factors have contributed to the annual affair. The first is location. Narok town is situated in a natural depression that makes it prone to flooding every time it rains. In fact, according to folklore, Narok town was chosen by elders because of its potential to flood. They hoped that the flooding would discourage colonialists from settling there. Residents here, though, seem to be paying for that decision many years later. And with the floods being an inevitable occurrence, local leaders are frantically looking for solutions to taming the recurrent currents that invade the town.
This one is too big for the county government, which has not been doing anything anyway, to come up and assist the people of Narok, the people who have lost businesses, the people who have lost lives, and to ensure that there is a proper channeling of water from the town center.
The floods were extraordinary. It was beyond the normal capacity of our drainage, and there is need for us to overhaul the sewerage system of this town.
This is not the worst flooding incident Narok has experienced. In 1993, over 40 people were killed after a heavy downpour. And to ensure the loss of life is less of a factor, some dams and water pans have been constructed in Narok. However, it is clear the county will need to do more to be ready when the rains come again. Victoria Rubadiri, NTV.
Vicky, of course, right now a lot of focus is on the results, what we can see, the destruction there in Narok, and many calling for action from the county government and national government. But it helps to look at the cause of this. And can this be connected, the Narok flooding, that is, to the destruction of the Mau forest?
Well, Mark, yeah, actually quite a bit. When you think about a lot of the water catchment outlying areas that are close to Narok town, a lot of the forest cover has deteriorated, and the trees actually act as an absorption factor when it comes to the rainwater to make sure at least that it doesn't flow down into Narok town. When you think of the town, it's actually shaped like a bowl. So whenever that rainwater comes down, the trees aren't able to absorb it. They go down into Narok town, of course, flooding the area. What's very ironic, of course, this is affecting the business in the town. In 2010, the World Bank report had actually rated it the best town to do business. So for it to get back to its former glory, it definitely has to deal with this water issue.
All right, Vicky, thanks very much indeed for that. We'll just have to keep an eye on those rains. All right, moving on now. Tonight, the government is admitting something went terribly wrong last week, forcing the president's jet to turn back. Ken, what do we know?
Well, Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri says there was a communication breakdown leading to that incident that, of course, embarrassed the president and painted his handlers as very negligent. The president is yet to speak on this matter and has almost kept away from the public eye. Rarely absent from the public eye unless out of the country, this will be a record for the head of state who has kept off from public appearances, choosing to retreat to the Sagana State Lodge. It is said the president was too angry to even salute those who welcomed him back at the airport, having been kept airborne for 4 hours in Ethiopia airspace, unable to fly over, while his handlers attempted to get clearance. And today, the man in charge of security in the country is speaking out.
I think there must have been some communication breakdown.
A mistake that could have been costly to the country. The president was headed to the United States via Dubai, where he was to catch a commercial flight but did not make it out of the East Africa airspace. State House downplayed the grave incident that was mishandled right from Nairobi, and in a misleading fashion attributed the president's unexpected return to the military activity in Yemen.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is taking appropriate action to ensure that such a happening will not be repeated.
And as they try to correct the mistake, the president is reported to be furious. Thursday will be the first cabinet meeting after the incident, which will likely be discussed prominently. Sources from State House also indicate that some changes may take place. Ken Mijungu, NTV.
Ken, you've made reference to how the government has handled this particular incident, of course, alluding this to the troubles in Yemen. But there is a former controller of State House who has described the events as almost treasonable. Do you get the feeling that this has been treated with the seriousness it deserves?
Well, Mark, we just have to take them by what they say, but the fact remains, the facts speak for themselves. From day one, when State House responded and tried to attribute this to what's happening in Yemen, there have been a lot of questions. The one question that everyone asked at that time is, everyone knows about what's happening in Yemen. Why would they still insist to fly over it? So when they realized that could not pass, now all these twists and turns come. And of course, you get the feeling that they really tried to spin this. However, it got out of hand. And the fact that it's being said to be treasonable, it means it's a grave mistake. That's the reason why at the end of my story I say that heads might roll at State House and the handlers and the president's protocol, because essentially what Nkaissery was admitting is that there was a problem with, right from Nairobi, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He should have gone ahead and even cleared the path for the president to fly through Ethiopia and get to Dubai and get his flight to the US. So this has not been handled well. However, how they try to spin it, and look at it this way, the president has kept off the public eye. Two explanations. One, probably because he'd already planned the week he was going to be out of Nairobi, so he couldn't have been in Nairobi. But the other one, he just wants to get time to reflect, and probably when he comes tomorrow for the cabinet meeting, we'll see what happens next.
Well, thank you, Ken, for that. And as you say, we'll wait and see as the twists and the spin to that tale from the cabinet meeting that is expected to be chaired by the president tomorrow at State House. And also, thank you, Victoria Rubadiri and Trevor Mbija, for the look at the different areas that are being affected by the heavy rains that are beating us, and especially Narok being the worst hit so far.
Right. Well, for now, though, we just stick to President Uhuru's meeting, and the president has implored American investors to ignore what has been passed off as lies about Africa and invest in the continent.
He was addressing the Milken Global Conference via video link after failing to make it to the U.S. under unclear circumstances last week.
He may have failed to make it physically to the Los Angeles Milken Conference in the USA. But President Uhuru Kenyatta's message was still delivered to the gathering that included Rwanda's President Paul Kagame and Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister.
I'm disappointed that I couldn't join you in person, but still it's a pleasure to make my contribution to this important conference by video.
The bulk of the president's message centered on the opportunities available in Africa and Kenya.
There is, ladies and gentlemen, good news to report in Africa. Africa is the second fastest growing region in the world. These developments are supported by demographic and technological shifts.
Leveraging on the country's numerous strides in technological advancements, especially the uptake of mobile phone technology and investments in infrastructure, the president implored upon the attendees, especially those from the USA, to put their money in Kenyan projects.
We are the gateway to Africa, its 9th largest economy, and the heart of a community of 150 million people. We aim to make the most of these advantages.
You know, I think that there are always things to worry about in Africa.
The three-day conference is also attended by a host of Kenyan government officials and private sector players, and has been organized by 68-year-old Michael Milken. Milken is described as a philanthropist, financier, medical research innovator, and public health advocate on his website. But beyond the accolades is a criminal past. In 1990, Milken pleaded guilty to 6 felony charges about his involvement in securities fraud and conspiracy while working on Wall Street. He served 22 months in prison aside from paying hefty fines. In the meantime, in response to the fiasco occasioned by tribalism at an event the president was scheduled to speak at in LA, Kenya's envoy to the USA, Njeru Githai, says he had no control over who spoke at the meeting, as the speakers represented different sets of Kenyans from different regions. He further says different Kenyan associations within the West Coast chose their speakers, and it would have been odd to call them and say so-and-so should not speak because he is from this or that tribe. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Now, the government and the Kenya Wildlife Service now say that the ivory nabbed in Thailand may not have originated from Kenya. The two attribute the argument to a drop in poaching in the last 2 years. Well, still, the consignment was handled in Kenya, and that raises many questions as to who was involved. Well, tonight, the name of the Nyali MP, that's Hezron Awiti, has come up, but he denies having his hand in the cookie jar.
One of Thailand's biggest ivory holes was traced to Mombasa 2 days ago. It was a big blow to the fight against illegal ivory trade, not just here in Kenya, but across many other countries. Many questions have come up, especially those querying the integrity of KRA officers, since KRA is the agency that mostly handles goods being exported.
So maybe start with
Now the government and KWS say the ivory may not have originated from Kenya, and that Kenya was just a transit point for the whole. KWS says the rate of poaching has reduced significantly in the last 2 years. But still, Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Water and Natural Resources, Judy Wahungu, says if that was the case, it should have been nabbed.
Is that the container itself arrived in the port of Mombasa on the 24th of March. It left Mombasa on the 6th of April. We are concerned that we did not detect this particular container. And as I said, investigations with the other forces we work with, which is the Kenya Police and KRA, are ongoing to find out how we slipped up.
No consignment number, address of clearing agency and shipping company, name of exporter or port of departure has been released. But it is alleged that Harbour Freights, a company owned by Nyali MP Hezron Awiti, handled the consignment. When asked, Awiti neither denied nor accepted ownership of the company that was allegedly contracted to handle the ivory disguised as tea.
Awiti Jobo owns so many businesses, and also owns so many buildings. Don't crucify me because I'm owning so many companies. So it is a matter of struggling. Yes, I own many companies. So, but we come back to me, I'll tell you what I'm owning.
Illegal wildlife trade raises about $20 billion per year. Wahungu says more information on this case is expected from Thailand in a few days' time. Masi Juma, NTV.
Let's widen the scope a bit. Now, 3 major incidents have occurred in the last couple of weeks in Africa, yet there has been little reaction from African leaders. Hundreds of migrants have lost their lives in the Mediterranean Sea, some of them Africans, escaping poverty and conflict and looking for a better life in Europe. Burundi is in a political crisis, and not to mention the xenophobia attacks in South Africa. But where are the African leaders?
Every day they keep coming. Most of them are from Syria and Libya, but in sub-Saharan Africa, they come from Eritrea, Somalia, Mali, Nigeria, Gambia and Senegal. Just last week, 700 are said to have died in the Mediterranean Sea when the tiny vessel they were squeezed in capsized. It caused an uproar in Europe, and the European Union immediately called an emergency summit to tackle the matter of immigrants. Some countries even made pledges.
What I'll be offering today is the Royal Navy flagship HMS Bulwark, also with 3 helicopters and 2 other border patrol ships, all of which will be able to help with these operations, of course, under the right conditions, and that must include that people that we pick up and people we deal with are taken to the nearest safe country, most likely Italy.
Yet the deafening silence from African leaders seems to be the most surprising, as it is shameful so far. There has not been any offer to help patrol the seas used by these migrants, let alone an AU summit to discuss the matter. Most of these immigrants are African, escaping from war, oppression, civil disorder and poverty.
On the sea, yes.
How is it?
Problem. It's very, very two problem. It is not good. It is small. Also, it's a lot of people, 360 people in one ship. Now it is not good.
The only voice of an African leader on the matter came from the African Union Commission Chair, Dlamini Zuma, during a meeting with the European Union Commission. She asked European countries to support mechanization of agriculture in Africa to make it more appealing for young men who make up the largest part of the immigrants. But it is not just that. There has been nothing major from African leaders, even with the terrorism in the continent, political turmoil in Burundi, and xenophobia in South Africa. African leaders have been accused of only rushing to save themselves and not doing much when the people are in trouble. Cue the AU Special Summit called in 2013 to discuss the matter of a mass withdrawal from the International Criminal Court if it persisted with its agenda of prosecuting African heads of state while they were still in office. Well, they will defend themselves and say that they have at least done something in the recent past. For instance, the peace deal on Central African Republic was just recently signed here in Nairobi. But has the AU been doing enough generally, especially on matters regarding ordinary African citizens? Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
to the county of Embu, and there was a heated face-off at the Gakwegori funeral home in that county between the funeral home officials and a family that had realized that the clothes that they bought for their departed kin were not the same ones that he was dressed in when they came to pick up the body. Now, the body was dressed in a second-hand T-shirt and trousers without shoes, different from the suit bought by the family for the man's burial. Well, when they demanded answers, the morgue attendant said there could have been a mix-up and a different body was dressed in the clothes. There were allegations that there is a cartel at the mortuary involved in taking clothes bought by families for their dead relatives and then reselling them to others at a higher price. Well, they then buy second-hand clothes to cover up for their fraud. However, this family refused to take anything cheaper than what they had bought, and the management was forced to buy a new suit for them. Residents have called for the immediate intervention from the county government to see an end to the bizarre cases of theft.
Hata kwa mamoshari iko na ile corruption inasemwa na Mheshimiwa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Gakwegori iko na corruption ya kuisha manguo ya maiti.
Michael Mbogo there just venting and showing the frustration, and indeed he brings up a legit point that even at the mortuary, corruption follows you even to the grave.
Right. I mean, it seems like people will go to all sorts of extremes to try and get their way.
The rot. Anyway, still coming up on NTV Tonight.
The tourism earnings similarly declined by 7.3% from 94 billion shillings to 87 billion over the same period.
Kenya's economy weathers storms to grow at 5.3%.
Masai Moran's going against the grain in tonight's My Job.
Welcome back to NTV Tonight. Now, business at the Kisumu County Assembly risks grinding to a complete halt following incessant wrangling.
As we speak, Smriti, there is an appeal case pending in court, while the leader of majority, together with his deputy, have been suspended by their sponsoring party ODM over misconduct that led to the assault of the Deputy Speaker Pamela Omino, who remains indisposed.
Well, tonight, NTV's Oko Okusa tries to trace when and where the rain started beating the County Assembly of Kisumu.
Speaker of the County Assembly of Kisumu County.
A few months after the last general election in March 2013, Anne Nadul was sworn in as the Speaker of the Kisumu County Assembly.
And the Republic of Kenya.
And for a couple of months, she discharged her duties smoothly. However, it did not take long before Adul's office and that of Governor Jack Ranguma locked horns.
Because Standing Order number 232 is very clear that for foreign trips, it is only the Speaker that decides and clears.
That dispute was the genesis of a protracted leadership wrangle, which later saw members of the Assembly pass a vote of no confidence on their Speaker.
The Speaker has impeached herself. By taking the maize to police station, it means she has absconded her duty. She's not there.
The hard-fighting Adul immediately moved to court to challenge her ouster.
You don't even know English, you don't even understand it?
What followed thereafter were ugly scenes of maltreatment meted out to Adul by a section of the MCS when she attempted to enter the August House.
You will not. You will not. Okay, don't. You will not get in here. You will not. You will not. You will not. You will not.
Soon, it emerged that the ghost of chaos haunting the house of shame was actually residing in the county government offices, where a row between the governor and his deputy Ruth Odinga was simmering.
For me, my governor, the buck stops with the governor. He's the governor of the county. But I took an oath, those of you who remember, to be able to advise the governor whenever possible in this relationship.
The rift between Ranguma and his deputy would soon split the house into two, with a section of the MCS led by the leader of majority Samuel Ong'ou throwing their weight behind Governor Ranguma, while the Speaker Anne Adul and her Deputy Pamela Omino appearing to belong to the faction allied to Ruth.
What has been happening in this county, where you find the governor saying this and the deputy governor saying the opposite, has not been good, and we are not going to entertain it. And as the majority leader who also represents same government here, we are not going to allow these blame games which have been in this county, where today the governor makes this announcement, the following day is actually dismissed by his own deputy.
The infighting soon caught the eye of CORD leader Raila Odinga, who 2 weeks ago convened a meeting with the warring camps in a bid to iron out their differences. Though Raila announced a breakthrough after the lengthy meeting, the events of yesterday speak volumes about the outcome of the peace meeting.
And before I came here, I called my whip, who is my whip of the party, Honorable Isaiah, and I told him we need to convene a kamkunji so that we can do a postmortem of what our party leader said. And he told me it's okay, after the devolution, we are going to call a kamkunji.
Pundits now argue that perhaps the only way to fix the rot at the assembly is by sealing the crack between Ranguma and his deputy. Okokusa, NTV, in the county of Kisumu.
Well, from that behaviour, let's just take a breather. But first, let's get a hint of what to expect in business.
And Suresh, we've been reporting in the first part about the heavy downpour, but there has been storms also in the corporate sector, as Dan Mwangi will tell us.
Exactly. Well, tourism. You know, the Ebola actually is one of the reasons why we've not grown as well as we'd have. The tourism sector has taken a blow, and that's part of what we're looking at in terms of economic growth for this last year and what to look forward to this year on Business After This.
NTV Business News in association with EMS.
Time to look at your money. Thank you for joining NTV Business. I'm Dan Mwangi. Now, Kenya's economy weathered the prevailing storm of a slump in the tourism industry occasioned by insecurity to register a growth of 5.3% in 2014 compared to the 5.7% it registered in 2013. However, this number comes in far below the cabinet's expectation for this year's growth, which is at 6.9%. The tourism industry itself saw international arrivals last year dip by 11.1% to 1.35 million from 1.52 million the previous year.
Often referred to as the backbone of the economy, the agriculture sector witnessed a slowdown in its growth rate, which was pegged at 3.5% last year, compared to growth of 5.2% in 2013.
You have tea that has a percentage increase of 2.9. You have coffee that has a significant increase of 24.4%, but we have decrease in maize production in terms of the bags that were produced by 4.2%.
The manufacturing sector also posted a slowdown in growth at 3.4% in 2014 compared to 5.6% the previous year, but had the value of its transactions heading north.
The total value of manufacturing projects also approved by financial institutions in this sector rose by 30.3%.
In 2013, the economy created 742,800 jobs. Last year, that figure went up 7.7%. However, a large percentage of these jobs are in the informal sector, which have no legal protections, little by way of benefits, and offer no long-term path to growth.
In 2014, the economy generated a total of 799,000 jobs in both the formal and informal sectors in the review period. The informal sector had the largest share of employment, accounting for 82.7% of the total employment.
Security concerns, the negative travel advisories, and the effect of the West African Ebola outbreak combined to make it a rough year for the tourism industry.
The tourism earnings similarly declined by 7.3% from 94 billion shillings to 87 billion over the same period.
The building and construction sector grew by a robust 13.1% compared to 5.8% the preceding year. Inflation in 2014 stood at 6.9% on average, up 1.2 percentage points the level it was in 2013. In 2014, mobile phone penetration rose to 78.3% from 74.9% in 2013, while mobile telephone subscriptions rose by 7.4% to 33.6 million. Mobile money transfers breached a new threshold.
The total transfers increased by 24.7% to 2.37 trillion, up from 1.902 trillion.
Last year, the value of ICT output increased by 12.7% to 262.3 billion shillings. The transport sector had the value of its output expanding by 13.7% in the 12-month period. The country continues to struggle with the challenge of growing the size of its exports.
The trade balance therefore worsened by 18.7% from a deficit of 911 billion in 2013 to a deficit of 1.08 trillion shillings in 2014.
According to Igoro, the economic prospects for 2015 are positive given that the volume of world trade is expected to grow by more than 4% from the 3% registered last year. International global crude oil prices are not expected to change significantly, and locally, the level of inflation is expected to be maintained within reasonable figures. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Now, it seems that there is more than meets the eye in how the Kenya Airports Authority tender for duty-free shops was conducted and awarded in August 2014. This emerged at the Public Investment Committee hearing earlier today. Now, the tender, which has been a subject of great debate, has since suspended infrastructure. CS Michael Kamau questioned over the process among other officials. NTV's Laban Clifonserio attended the hearing at Parliament.
The ghosts stemming from the forceful eviction of Kamlesh Patni's world duty-free shops from the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in August 2013 have come to haunt those in charge. The Public Investment Committee was at it again today. First in line was former Kenya Airports Authority Managing Director Stephen Gichuki, who went on terminal leave in October 2013. On the 1st of August 2013, businessman Kamlesh Patni was evicted from JKIA. Shortly afterwards, on the 7th of August 2013, fire broke out at the airport that razed a part of the arrivals terminal.
I did serve for 2 terms. The building, you could have supervised the burning of the airport, this contract of the Patni.
I had done enough for this country. And so I had no problem. I left peacefully. I didn't have any, even today, I don't have any grudge against anybody.
And I think the issue of the fire at the airport is something that is a public domain, and they have really nothing. And we also need to be fair to the witnesses before us.
All those master plans being implemented now in the airport, those are my plans, and I'm proud of it.
The committee posed the same questions to suspended Infrastructure Cabinet Secretary Engineer Michael Kamau. He was accompanied by his suspended Permanent Secretary Nduva Muli, who was part of KAA's board.
I feel very, very hesitant to go back to my office and try and obtain government documents. Because one of the reasons why we were told to get out is not to interfere. You can ask somebody, because the reason is there are conflicting positions, almost all the issues. So I think if we take the position that we'll get that information from somebody else, and that somebody else maybe might not be truthful, I think that will be prejudicial.
The now flawed tendering process of the duty-free shops may have been due to key underlying reasons in the management of Kenya Airports Authority.
This was one of the problems, that the management did not at all appraise the board of the process going on.
I'm sorry for micromanaging KAA. I called virtually everybody I could call to go and try and reverse. So if we are the bad guys here, if we are the bad guys, please just tell us. Tell both of us that we are the bad guys.
As next steps, the hearing was adjourned as both parties sought for more time to get more information on the inquiry. Laban Clifonserio, NTV Business.
Year in, year out, unemployment remains high on the list of Kenya's national challenges. The government and private sector have been doing at least something to attend to this. However, on what statistical basis? What really is the rate of unemployment in Kenya? It is an important figure to have, as it would ideally inform the public and private sector players in their policy and decision-making. In today's feature on the run-up to Labor Day, we look into the unemployment issue with regard to the official up-to-date rate or the lack of it thereof.
This feature was brought to you by Kotu.
Hard at work as they have their seconds of fame, seconds to showcase their first-class standard and mode of work. The norm at the annual commemoration of Labor Day, a day that, though marked in pomp and color, may just as well be another shade of irrelevance with tints of hope for one day.
My government has awarded a salary increment.
One day when they will have something to celebrate in the context of May 1st, the story of the unemployed. Successive governments have been promising to firmly tame the monster, but to no avail. Progress has, however, been made, but leaves more mileage to be covered.
In 2014, the economy generated a total of 799,700 jobs in both the formal and informal sectors.
So job creation has been ongoing, at least the statistics say as much. But walk around the country, especially in major towns and cities, almost every turn, left, right, you'll probably find 1, 2, 3, or maybe more unemployed people. Question is, exactly how many unemployed people are there in Kenya?
We have the 9.7 from the population and housing census.
The unemployment rate is?
Yeah, 9.7%. Yeah.
These figures are anchored on the 2009 statistics and may be criticized as being out of date or impractical. This brings the concern, then how does government make policy decisions without this kind of information that is up to date? And could this partly be the reason why some government projects are yet to come to fruition as per the promise? Now going forward, when then should we expect the next up-to-date unemployment rates?
After we do the household budget survey, we are going to give the current unemployment rate. The household budget survey normally takes a period of 1 whole year. So by 2016 June, that is when now we'll have to release the household budget survey.
For now, many have to rely on other sources of the figures such as American CIA Factbook or the Socio-Economic Atlas of Kenya, which indicates that in 2011-2012, the level of unemployment hit 40%. This poses a risk not just from a high-level perspective, but also down to the streets, as one of the fruits of unemployment is insecurity. Jobless people, most of whom are youth, sometimes resort to criminal activities to get by.
The informal work employment sector is going up, but the formal work now itself is going down. And it's a big challenge. And to us, I think all this is attributable to the fact that little is being done by the government to create wealth.
All said and done, there definitely is a need for precise figures on the huge issue that is unemployment to have proper and relevant policy put in place.
This feature was brought to you by Kotu.
Well, after the unemployment question, we take that's the end of business, rather. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dan Mwangi. Hand you back to Mark and Smriti.
All right, thanks very much. I'm sure many people will be looking forward to Labor Day to see what comes of it. Dan, thanks.
And thank you for staying with us. We have more coming up after this short break.
Delivering your package has never been so much faster, secure, reliable, and affordable. EMS, going beyond the extra mile.
Welcome back. Now, I'm no expert. Just because I'm called Mark Masai doesn't mean anything to this story, but the Masai culture abhors the touching of a woman's, I'm not going to do it, the touching of a woman's head by a man. Now, in this culture also, it is demeaning for a man to plate a woman.
But this age-old belief is slowly being overcome by young Morans who are now making a fortune at the coastal town of Mombasa from plaiting women's hair the Masai style.
The Masai hairdressers of Buxton grace make this week's edition of My Job with Mercy Juma.
It is not your typical hair salon. They just make do with the shelter offered by the large trees at the Malindi bus stage in Buxton, Mombasa. Dressed in their distinctive red and blue robes and beaded jewelry, many would expect them to be either herding or providing security. But the Masais of Buxton are making their mark in braiding. Samuel Saitoti came to Mombasa from Narok in 2007 in search of employment as a watchman, but his kinsmen convinced him to join this lucrative trade.
Sasa nikakati nimejua nikaachana na hiyo kazi ya kulinda, nikafanya hiyo kazi sasa. Kwa muda sasa kama mimi kuna miaka kama 6 sijalinda na nafanya hiyo kazi.
In other salons, hairdressers take between 6 to 12 hours to cover one head with this popular style referred to as twists. But these Masais have a better way of rolling the thread using their thighs. For many, it is not a skill learnt entirely here. Morans learn to weave hair into thin dreadlocks during the initiation, which takes place when boys are aged between 17 and 20 in manyatas back home. The warrior's hair is often dyed red as well, and the red style is popular among women in cities. But this was only done strictly between Morans, not to ladies.
Ilikuwa ni aibu kushika mwanamke kichwa.
When at work, finger snaps are the language of communication. Some tell me they came here hoping to get married to white women but did not succeed. Others say their parents would disown them if they knew they plait women's hair for a living. But the money is good. On good days like holidays, they make up to 30,000 shillings per day, which they split amongst themselves. The prices here range from 800 shillings to as much as 7,000 shillings depending on size of twist and style.
Nimefundisha wasichana wengi sisi hapa ambao sasa wana saluni town. Anakuja tunasonga, akiona ni kazi nzuri anarudi tunafundisha, anajua kusonga naye anaenda kufungua saluni yake ama aende ajiriwe mahali asonge tusi kama hii.
The women love their spinning style and come here from far to get their services.
Nimetoka all the way from town, nimeacha salon mingi huku kuja tu hapa. Not that they are cheap, but their services are the best.
Ni muda kidogo amechukua na hivi nakimbilia shughuli zangu zingine.
If asked whether they think of changing trade, all of them say no. From this business they have paid dowry and acquired a lot of wealth.
Na watu wanajua kutafuta shedi ni kazi hakuna. Kuna mtu ambao anaona anani kutembea kutafuta kazi, anaona aibu. Nyumbani hata ninayo ng'ombe zaidi ya 20 nimenunua kwa ajili ya kazi. Na nina shamba nimenunua kwa ajili ya kazi.
When they started doing this, the reception was not that good. Even today in their culture, it is still taboo for a man to touch a woman's head. But these men say they will continue doing this since the profits have been amazing. They receive between 50 and 20 guests in a day, some from as far as Uganda and South Africa. Masi Juma, NTV in Buxton, Mombasa County for My Job.
Actually giving the ladies at the Kenyatta market in Ngumo a run for the money.
Right, and also just to let our viewers know that during that story, Watson did ask Mark if he's ever had his hair braided, but you didn't quite answer.
Believe it or not, when I did have hair,
when you had hair,
when I had hair, I did have some cornrows on my head, and this was when I was in a confused ages, you know.
There's nothing wrong with cornrows, but anyway.
And you mentioned Watson, so he has to tell us whether he had, believe it or not, he had some hair also.
Yes, my rebel years, and I had some cornrows as well, yeah.
And dreadlocks.
Yes.
All right, Watson, what do you have for us now?
I have plenty from football. We had some football action, that's the Kenyan Premier League, as well as Isaiah Kiplagat launching his bid. He's going international now, he's going global. And the AK have the AGM tomorrow, of course, and we have details of that and plenty more after the break on NTV Sport. Welcome back to NTV Sport. I'm Watson Karuma now. Sofapaka scored a late goal through veteran striker John Baraza to salvage a 1-1 draw against struggling KCB in the midweek Kenyan Premier League match played today at the Machakos Stadium. The Bankers led from the 14th minute courtesy of Ugandan Ronald Musana, but Toto Bamungu, however, denied them the 3 points after Baraza headed in an equalizer in the 3rd minute of added time. Sofapaka now lies 7th with 14 points, while KCB are 14th on 5. The league continues on Friday with a match between AFC Leopards and Sony Sugar at the Nyayo Stadium before a weekend full of matches. Now, the national men's volleyball team has been named ahead of this weekend's All-Africa Games qualifiers in Rwanda. At the same time, ink is now dry on the sponsorship deal between Britam and Premier League club Mathare United. These highlights and more are in our local sports roundup.
Qatar-based great attacker Philip Mayo will lead Kenya's All-Africa Games qualifying campaign this weekend in Rwanda. Other experienced players named by head coach Geoffrey Omondi are Japan-based left attacker Dennis Mukua, former Turkey-based left attacker Mike Chemoz, and Ulinzi setter Elisha Alua. The 10-man squad that has been training at the Neo Gymnasium will depart to Rwanda on Friday for the 4-day continental qualifiers, seeking to match the women's team, which qualified for the September's All-Africa Games in Congo-Brazzaville with a 100% record in Uganda last week.
And the team assembled, they wanted to be told at the gate, sorry, we are fully booked. And it's a fact that we had booked much earlier. We had actually paid for it. But, well, we understand there's a bank which took over the entire place. We had nothing to do except to relocate here, and this is not, it's not an ideal venue.
Still at Nyayo, 2008 Kenyan Premier League champions Mathare United formally unveiled its new 3-year sponsorship deal worth 75 million shillings with insurance firm Britam. The partnership comes as a boost to the Slum Boys, who previously slumped into a financial crisis, forcing players to look for greener pastures. The Mathare-based club has also struggled to survive in the top flight recently and currently lies 11th with 10 points, 10 adrift leaders Gor Mahia.
Sometime in the next 3 years, and sooner rather than later, you're going to have to call Mathare United the defending champions again.
The national relays team is on its way to the Bahamas, where it will take part in a 2-day World Relay Series this weekend. The team, led by 1500 meters champion Asbel Kiprop, has been on residential training at Kasarani under the guidance of head coach Sami Rono. Kenya will be seeking to retain both the men's and women's 800 meters titles, despite lacking elite athletes such as Olympic record holder David Rudisha and world champion Eunice Sum. Seth Olale, NTV Sport.
Athletics Kenya is set to have its annual general meeting tomorrow, when, according to the long-serving chairman Isaiah Kiplagat, something big is coming. It could be bigger than his official launch to bid for the VP position at the World Athletics governing body, IAAF, which was given a wide berth by athletes and a section of top officials, as Warothe Kiru tells us.
After close to half a century of working in Kenyan athletics administration, Isaiah Kiplagat now has a bigger dream.
For the vice presidency of the IAAF.
To illustrate the longevity of his hold on Kenyan athletics, Kiplagat was the chief de mission for the Kenyan team to the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico, where Dr. Kipchoge Keino won men's gold in 1500 meters race. He then joined the precursor to AK, Kenya Amateur Athletics Association, in 1975 and had a stint as the Secretary General for a decade before rising to vice chair and eventually chairman 22 years ago. Now, Kiplagat has a dream for those born when he was chair.
Make the young love athletics by taking the sport to them, particularly in schools.
Kiplagat is eyeing one of the IAAF vice president's posts set to be vacated by Britain's Lord Sebastian Coe and Ukraine's pole vault record holder Sergei Bubka, who will be vying for the top post in world athletics to succeed Senegalese national Lamine Diack.
Kenya will stand to gain. In fact, don't forget that when I became a council member of the IAAF, quite a lot of things came to Kenya. We started getting our teams being paid for by the IAAF to go and compete in international. In fact, the first time I got 40 million shillings to recarpet the Nyayo Stadium. I got funding to furnish our offices, and I got funding to do quite a number of training courses in Kenya. So I'm sure that when I get there, there will be more in store for Kenya as a country.
Also interested in the same seat is Confederation of Africa Athletics Chairman Hamad Kalkaba, and the long-serving AK chair will have to be at his political best to navigate the international politics. But before then, he will have to deal with fires at home. Kenya is home to world-beaten athletes, but interestingly, no big-name athlete was present at the launch. Kiplagat has 4 pillars in his manifesto: grassroots development, new formats and events, athletics welfare and education, and integrity. Warothe Kiru, NTV.
Now, Chelsea is currently taking on Leicester City, and the scores are still 0-0. And now Chelsea were booed off the Emirates as boring Chelsea, with the club constantly being accused of packing the blue bars whenever they play top teams. Well, they can tell you, or rather show you, that they are not. But not on the pitch, better at the dinner table. Well, they're telling you that they're not boring Chelsea, but they should have been doing that on the pitch and not at the dinner table.
Right.
Well, the manners, table manners.
I tell you.
Sure.
They're just having fun. I like it. That's it.
All right, thanks very much, Watson. You've been watching NTV Tonight. That's where we close tonight's bulletin. Thanks very much for your company. I'm Smriti Vidyathi Mohindra. Good night.
And I'm Mark Masai. Since those Chelsea guys were passing it over, I'll pass it to you.
Well, thank you. And good night to you too.